Hello everyone and welcome to a special edition of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today I have two special guests with me who neither of them are, thank God, named AJ. I have both, I want to hopefully get these names correctly because they're a little bit up north, Colin and Robin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh phew, thank God. I was very concerned. The names had me very just concerned if I pronounce them correct. So, the reason both of you two here today is talk about Museum of Other Realities. You guys together, I think, are part of it's More Museums. How you pronounce your studio's name?
Yeah, the Museum of Other Realities, or the More, as we call it, is a virtual reality art museum which showcases art from artists all around the world, and you can visit it from anywhere there is a headset.
So I think that's maybe actually a good place kind of to start. Then is can you guys talk about like where did this idea come from? Because on face value, it's an idea that like I feel like every designer's point has always been like, I want to make a museum in VR, but like you guys found a way to actually do it in a very unique and I feel like only a VR way because this museum could never exist.
I think you really hit the nail on the head with the comment on only a VR way. Um, you know, I feel like it is kind of an obvious idea to an art gallery in VR, but I think what separates us from what a lot of other people are trying is that we only show art that is made specifically for VR. The way we approached it was maybe backwards from the obvious route, where somebody thinks, "Oh man, it'd be great to do an art gallery in VR." Then you could like see the Mona Lisa from anywhere. Our approach was more from the, "Oh man, there's so much amazing stuff people are making in VR. We just need a way for people to see." So the Museum of Other Realities is dedicated specifically to art by artists who engage with VR, and so we don't show, you're not going to see any Matisse Dali sculptures or anything in there. And philosophically, we think that's a good idea because that stuff looks better in the real world, and all the stuff we're showing looks a lot better in VR. You can never do it in the real
world. Okay, so on face value then, so like part of the whole like thing I know with you guys is like, as you even point out like everywhere, is like you like to support artists and like get artists around the world. So how do you like find these artists you like, I want you in my museum or whatever?
Well, in some cases, we will reach out to the artist, and in other cases, more often than not, it seems that these artists have networks of artists that they're in touch with and working with, and if they have a positive experience with us, then they tend to spread the word and invite other artists to our gallery, and we kind of get to go from there a lot of the time. So we're very fortunate to work with a huge number of talented people, and it's just kind of snowballed over the last couple of years.
That's very interesting. So, do you guys have like any of those like pieces that like on top of your head whenever you like start talking about this game of like like your favorite pieces you've seen?
Well, oh man, no, go take it away, Colin.
I mean, I don't want to say anything is my favorite. We're showing a lot of really good stuff, and we've got also there's a bunch of stuff that we're not currently showing that I'm really excited about showing. But we show a lot of amazing stuff done in VR tools like Tilt Brush and Medium and Masterpiece. And so we've got currently, we're showing an exhibit by Danny Pittman, which is, we're showing a wing of Tilt Brush stuff by him, or a room of Tilt Brush stuff by him. And that kind of, it's very colorful and pops a lot. And he's got a couple of creatures and then also some areas you can go. So one of them is called Night Snow. And if you imagine yourself in a surreal camping trip with snow everywhere and trees rising above you and kind of a crackling fire represented by a spear, what Night Snow was like. And then we're also showing some newer stuff by Danny Bittman. That was all from 2017. We're showing some 2019 stuff by Danny Bittman, which he did not using. What tool is the new Danny Bittman stuff?
Gravity Sketch.
Yeah, he's been working a lot in Gravity Sketch, and so That is also a lot of creature and environment work, and kind of a companion piece for Night Snow in there is kind of a Candyland island filled with bright trees and rolling hills and grasses. And both of those pieces, it's really hard to experience without getting inside them. We let you. One of the things we do in the museum is instead of just walking around and looking at landscapes, you can. So we use teleport to get around as well as a linear motion. But if you teleport inside of this, you go down inside it and be part of it. Is kind of earlier Silk Rush, dark camping spot. It is newer kind of candy rolling hills, really evocative when you get down into them.
Hey, Colin, I think you might want to scooch up a little closer to the mic there. We're losing some of what you're saying.
Oh, okay. How's this?
Or maybe it's just me. This sounds pretty good.
I was about to say, I think it was mostly, but yeah, definitely, there's moments you can tell we started like, wee! That's always the greatest thing, always, when you have to get used to a mic next to you, you're like, where does the mic be? And then you naturally, you just start leaning back and sitting and...
Well, usually it's on our face, which makes life easy, so it's a little more complicated when that's not the case.
But no, that's very interesting. I do appreciate, like, how much, like, for example, there, like, you can tell you guys actually, like, really care about the artists you bring on board for this stuff, too. And that's kind of even, like, face value when I was first seeing the game, and I was like, it's very interesting, this, like, it's not like the concern always when you have these kind of museums is you just kind of like my dream joke VR museum is I want a museum of every old prop that got used once in a video game, just to see this absurdness of like what never gets reused again. But like this feels like you guys hand picked almost like every little thing, and you still made it feel like an art museum. So I've got to ask then, do you guys have like some major inspirations in like museums kind of like you went to growing up or recently that like you kind of wanted to model this after?
I would say that what we're doing with the Moor is different from really any real life museum, but there are a number of museums that we admire. And personally, I enjoy the Vancouver Art Gallery right here in our city, but I'm also a fan of the SF MoMA, the Tate. Saatchi Gallery is doing some really cool stuff right now. There's a whole lot of inspiring work being done out there.
Yeah, definitely the Vancouver Art Gallery for us is always been a touchstone since we spent so much time in it. And the Pompidou in Paris is modern art, showing things in interesting ways that has.
So, was there ever like a moment? So, like, obviously, the whole thing is like it feels like in the art you guys present is very like I think modern and like this kind of like very abstract art nature. Was there ever a moment where you almost wanted to like start making the stuff less abstract? Because I think at least inherently when you start abstracting the art, you gain a certain segment, but I almost wonder if you lose a bigger segment because who doesn't know what they're looking at?
I think we try and... No, you go ahead, Colin.
You go.
I think we try and strike a balance between being challenging and engaging and also accessible, and I think we do a pretty decent job of that. A lot of what we're showing has layers, so we hope that people are able to get something from it even if they don't unlock everything that it is and all the ways it can be used. And we also try and provide a space for pieces which can be enjoyed more thoroughly if you're reading the write-up or speaking to the artist, but can also be enjoyed in a very accessible and surface level sort of interaction. I think that's what we strive for with most of what we show.
Okay. I think it's very interesting. So now I kind of want to jump into, so now we have a general piece of the game. I kind of want to jump into kind of like the harder stuff of it, which to me is like you guys began with are an early access game, and I think inherently your early access and your VR game, which has obviously inherent challenges to it. I think the first thing we're kind of start with is were you guys concerned with almost like the stigma of early access, where it's not just like games incomplete? It feels like early access recently have started to have this stigma of like, oh, it's not like even a game; it's like this not done stuff. And how do you guys kind of like try to push away from that?
First early access is just a really obvious. It was really obvious for us to go with early access because the museum isn't like a video game where you finish it and it's done. And you constantly. So every month we do.
Hey, if you don't mind, Colin, if you could lean forward just a little bit again.
Oh.
Wait, is this the mic it's using?
I
Yes.
think that's the mic you're using.
That's the mic.
Oh, my apologies.
No, you're fine.
I've been
That's
using
what
the
I
wrong
hear.
mic the whole time.
The rest of it I was able to hear fine, and I was like, wait.
All right. Oh yeah, early access. So early access just makes a lot of sense for us. Since the museum is going to be growing forever, we'll always have monthly shows. There's no kind of goal of completion for the museum. So for us, early access is kind of more of a label than it is, if you will. Like, it's always going to be growing over time, and right now we don't think it's quite what we're willing to call 1.0. Yeah, I mean, we're always going to grow over time. We don't think, we're not willing to put a 1.0 on what we have right now. We think it's a little small. There's like features that aren't in place. Our multiplayer isn't where it should be. And, early access is just a really great way for us to get feedback from visitors and grow over time with, a base of people that are willing to be engaged part of the process rather than people who are just looking for, say, a quick fix.
So you almost inherently then feeling like early access is the best way, almost in modern times, to describe a game as like not a live as service game, but almost that mindset. But you think early access is the only inherent label for that?
I mean, I think anything labeled as a beta, you could run it yourself. A lot of our friends run their own betas, either privately or externally. Early access on Steam just has a lot of infrastructure support for it, so it makes it really easy for us. We're not looking to do another advantage for us over early access in terms of marketing and money matters is unlike a typical game. We're not looking to have kind of a massive first week and then expect to see sales slide off over time. We expect things to grow month to month, so we don't think there's that same risk inherent in early access that kind of a one and done video game would.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because it's, and I think maybe it's more recently, and I feel like we've seen this the last couple of years, where like that's my immediate concern when I see early access stuff, is that like, is this gonna even like work out of the box? And I think another thing kind of jumps is like, so you guys are also obviously a VR game, and I think we can all agree, because I do enough about my own stuff too, where I go, VR is a market like we all wish was bigger, and like how many headsets are out there and how many people have multiple headsets. So the next thing I want to talk about is so you right now support, I think it's the best way to call it, it's like the core, what I call the higher end PC market. So like Vive, Rift, and now Index. Is there like a world you guys want where you can make this more like mobile friendly and start expanding that mindset, or because of like the bottleneck you'll hit with this major market?
Well, a couple of points to that. One, yeah, obviously, as VR developers, we appreciate that the market is still small and growing. One point to that is that we're here for the long run. So we're here. We expect the market to grow over the next few years, and so we expect to grow with it. And then point two, which is reaching other headsets. I mean, we are as excited about like Quest and the mobile headsets as anybody, and as big fans of them as everybody. So we're definitely looking in those directions. We hope that will happen. Obviously, there's some challenges for us. The art that artists are making, they tend to make with a high-end headset, and so that it tends to be expensive to show. But there's always ways we can find to show stuff on lower end headsets.
Yeah, because I always picture like a lot of I feel like VR games like who start doing it, you can always kind of tell when they make stuff for those like somewhat lower end of headset. You can tell it's the same game, but like you kind of try to give it the almost the mobile treatment is what we'd always look at it, like the same idea. And I could see where you don't want to like compromise the art vision at the same time.
Yeah, I mean that's such the perfect way to put it. I mean for us, visual fidelity is the entire point of the thing. So we can't go taking stuff made for a mobile headset and then hoping that it will wow people in a tethered headset.
Okay. So also with VR then, was there ever a world where you guys looked in this and gone, well, maybe we should try to like see if this would also really work in 2D too? Or is it in your head this like physically only possible in VR, even if it's like you wouldn't want to release 2D because it's a lesser experience, too much of a lesser experience?
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to release a version on flat screen. It's just not the same. And a lot of our creators aren't creating on a flat screen. So, that's really what the museum is about, is spatial computing and spatial understanding of the art. And I think that a lot of that is lost if you port it to something else. Which is not to say that other experiences don't work on a flat screen. And there's been some really great examples of people doing crossplay. But I think for what we're doing, at least for the foreseeable, headsets are where we want to be.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious as I wrap up this kind of like VR talk for a second. What is there something that you guys feel is missing in VR right now that you think would massively help either your development or the museum itself?
I mean, I think the big things missing in VR right now are actually not hardware related. I think they're all software related. I've actually thought that since like last year, since the Vive and the Oculus came out. I think that we have like technologically and tracking that is very compelling, and we just have to do a huge amount of design work to get there. There's a fantastic example of that. It's a system seller. Everybody loves it because it's super well designed for VR and it works really well in VR. And that's one of the reasons we're doing the art gallery, is that the people are really pushing an interactivity in VR are artists trying these crazy things. So I think what we're missing is actually not hardware. I think is a lot of software people want to like just push it back on the hardware people because it's
the easiest thing to push on.
Yeah, right. But I think it's actually us. I think it's just we need design work, honestly, is what VR needs.
So when you say design work, do you think it's more like the designers or design tools to help you with VR? So my example is like one of the great things I think that happened recently, like I think like a year ago or so, is like Unreal actually made their like developing in VR like actually work. So you could actually like level design straight in VR instead of jumping in and out, which helps a ton once you get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think those tools are what is going to unlock the designers. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. That the easier it is for people to play and make interesting, different, compelling experiences, the more of those we'll get.
I kind of wish like the idea of like they talk about like dreams is going to be playable in VR, and I'm like I wish that like that idea could just expand further out and what you could do with that kind of ideas in other games.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, Dreams is a fantastic example. Like, I expect that to be a really fertile ground for the kind of design work I'm talking about.
Okay. So, coming up then, so you guys have been out now for a couple weeks in early access, I believe.
Yep.
Is there anything looking at this complete early part of this game being completely out for everyone that you guys have, like, wish you realized sooner of, like, either stuff that you thought would work it didn't, or, like, lessons you learned in these first couple weeks of early access?
Well, I think certainly we've learned about some edge cases that we had no idea were going to manifest, and that's been incredibly useful in squashing a number of bugs. We've gotten some really great feedback from people who are playing the game, and we're also able to point people who ask about the gallery to the public release, which is probably one of the best parts. We're getting into our monthly cycle of shows, which has been a lot of fun. I would say it's been almost entirely positive, aside from a few gripping moments sorting out mystery bugs. But yeah.
Wow, that
Yeah,
is.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I'm just saying that's very impressive. I'm saying that it was that positive. 'Cause I feel like I've heard so many stories of like the exact opposite.
Yeah, we've also been working on the museum for over a year before we went to early access. Just kind of quietly as a very small team. We became a larger team just recently in March. We've had a lot of private gatherings just with artists and a lot of artists in the space. So what you see in early access is actually a lot of iterative design already in it. So we've learned a lot of lessons. We have a lot of lessons still to go, but it's definitely, it might be a little more refined design-wise than it appears on the cover.
Okay. Great. So I want to, as we wrap up here, I want to thank you guys for joining us and talking about. I think this is a very interesting game, and I think this is a perfect example of the type of game that like VR was made for. And I think so far the execution has been really great, especially for how early on it's going. So as we go here, are there any last things you guys would like to tell the people about the Museum of Other Realities and any amazing things they could look forward to?
Oh yeah, I just want to talk about the artists that we're showing and the amazing people doing amazing work in VR. It's like, it's like they're the point. We're just an infrastructure to like let people see it, and just you gotta come check out the amazing work people are doing because it's astounding.
Okay. Anything else?
I think Colin's pretty much said it all. If you're an artist, an aspiring artist, or an art enthusiast, please come check us out. museumor.com.
Great, as you heard him, it's Museum of. So yeah, so museumor.com. It's Museum of Other Realities on Steam, and you guys also have a Discord community.
We do, yes. Which the exact name escapes me, but I think we can get you the link to it here right after the podcast.
Great, I'll make sure the link's in the show notes below if you guys are interested. Again, I think this is a very fascinating game, and I'd like to thank you guys. Thank you for joining me for this fun conversation, and I'll catch all of you guys next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special interview of the SWW show. I'm Mike. This here, again, as we always like to point out, is not AJ. We're all really excited about that. So could you please introduce yourself and where you currently work?
Hello, I'm Tony Wilson. I'm currently the owner, designer, coder, and pretty much everything at Grindwheel Games.
Grindwheel Games. So I could detect your accent. So where are you out of exactly?
Well, I'm from the UK. I was over in Poland for a couple of years. That's actually where I first launched the first version of the game. But yeah.
So the UK. So okay. So the UK, if you correct me wrong, it's like, is the UK the one where it's like England, part of it's Wales, England, part of Ireland? That's the UK one, right? Was that Britain?
And Scotland, of course.
Okay, and Scotland, okay.
That's the one, the United Kingdom.
Okay. I'm an American. There are times when you start explaining the different ways that England and Britain and the UK work together, and I just go, you all have the same accent, I'm good to go.
Oh, no, we absolutely don't have the same accent. You travel like 5 hours in any different direction, you'll find a whole group of people with different accents. Like just up here in the northeast alone, you've got the Sand Dancers, which is roughly where I am at the moment. Then you've got the Geordies and the Mackhams, and then you get over into Scotland.
Oh, so I gotta ask you then, as we get this started. Then, if I told you like I have an American accent, can you tell like regional differences, like how most Americans have a tendency not to be able to tell your regional differences, or does it just sound just American to you?
Vaguely. I mean, there's obviously the extremely strong American accents, such as Texan or that kind of Californian drawl that was very popular in the 80s and 90s, the whole surfer stereotype thing. And then, of course, there's like a bit of the East Coast accent, that kind of more old-timey things. Using the same sort of slang. Like here, we say I. for yes, and I believe that's a kind of a New England thing as well.
Wow, you understand American accents way better than Americans understand any level of outside accents. I'll give you that. It's impressive.
Well, thank you.
So, to start out then, so let's start with the kind of like where you came from and like, because you do a lot on this game. So, like, what is your background and like where do you come from to have this like really good roundness of skills?
Well, essentially, I started in games around about 2005. I'd trained. My degree was in software engineering. I didn't go directly into games because I thought, that's something that I wanted to do and had always wanted to do since I was very young. But I thought, no, there's no chance. You've got to have so much additional experience. You've got to have multiple released products. There's no way that's going to happen. So I went into software engineering as my main thing, expecting to work on databases, general IT stuff and coding. Hopefully, joining some sort of major company on that level. But after I got out, the first major opportunity I had was to go work for a company called Jagex, which makes RuneScape, and they were looking for software engineers who had a very gamey background, and I did. Basically, when we moved up here to the northeast from Yorkshire, me and my brother got parked at one of the only games workshops that was open at that particular time. Well, this is like mid '80s, so it was one of the few ones that was there. So from that point onwards, me and him, we'd been hooked into fantasy, gaming, all of this kind of stuff, and video gaming was something which really kind of intrigued me because we didn't have a computer ourselves for a good chunk of time. We had an Amiga at one point, but usually what would happen was because these machines were so expensive and so valuable, they'd be brought home from schools because my parents were teachers. So the BBCs, especially the old green screen ones, had to be brought back. So it's kind of, wow, the magic box, and you can play games on them, and it's amazing. So it was always kind of a dream to get into that. So when Jagex offered me the position, I went and worked with them a little over 11 years, working mostly on RuneScape itself.
Wait, so you worked on RuneScape until like 2016?
Yes, that's right.
So this is the question. So I never truly believed it. So you're telling me there were actually people playing RuneScape in 2016? I thought that was just a meme on the internet.
Nope, I'm pretty sure they're still playing it now.
And this is no offense. At a certain point, I was like, every time I hear people say this, I go, because the majority of people, like, when you talk to them, like, play it, because I love it as a kid, and I'm like, it's very interesting, like, this is, like, the MMO that, like, hits the nostalgia, and that's the reason it's successful compared to, like, a bunch of other ones where they go, we have to evolve to survive. RuneScape has this, like, base foundation of everyone grew up with it.
Yeah, and that's why RuneScape Old School was. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard about that.
That's why that was so successful. They basically took a 2007 branch of the code and put it on some servers, and people went nuts for it. But no, the thing is that you're probably still imagining it. If you played it as a kid, you're still imagining it probably pre HD graphics updates, all this kind of stuff. So it's basically blocky men wearing square armor, flailing at each other. There's been updates to the code, and the fact that there have been continuous updates to not just the code but the lore and the world. That's one of the strongest things about it. Is compared to most MMOs, especially the ones that died over the period that RuneScape has stayed alive. It's your quests, it might have amazingly detailed background and lore, but your actual in-game quests are talk to a guy, get told to beat up 12 gold-dropping squirrels, and then come back to them. Whereas ours are, quest-wise, they're... I mean, obviously that's a bit of a stereotype, but this is kind of one of the things out there, is that the quest and the writing was so much stronger. There was a lot more characterization. Quests weren't just fetch quests. In fact, I think the only major fetch quest in the game, quests. Yeah, there's I think it's called One Small Favor, and it is literally, you need to get an accordion. So you speak to the accordion guy and says, "Oh, can you bring me some canvas?" And you speak to the canvas guy, and they say, "Oh, can you bring me a candle?" And you speak to the candle guy, and you go all the way around the world doing this. It's basically a parody of the kind of fetch quests.
Interesting.
Yeah. So so effectively, I worked there, like I say, for 11 years. There was a brief stint where I was working on the sadly dead side project Stellar Dawn, which was going to be a sci-fi game. And then after that, I went over to Poland for a couple of years to work for a company called Sperasoft, who you might not have directly heard of them. I don't know. Well, you probably have played some content that they've made because they're an outsourcing company, and they've got a big name clients across the board. So I went out to work for them. Specifically, I was hired to work on Assassin's Creed Odyssey in a quest mission designer role. Unfortunately, that fell through. Sure, I've heard a number of reasons why it happened, but basically they lost the mandate. So after that, they took me on to the business development side of things. So I was sitting down, I was meeting with clients, I was reviewing products as they came in, saying, yes, this is something we can work on. And in the background all the time, they were saying, okay, if we get this mandate, there's going to be design roles attached to that. Maybe there'll be quest design, maybe there'll be system design, maybe there'll be combat design, but we've got to nail down the mandate. Unfortunately, after 2 years, that hadn't happened, so we decided very mutually that it was time to kind of call it a day, because they could see over this year that they weren't going to be getting a design mandate. They just knew with the work that they'd taken on at the end of last year that they weren't going to be able to get that. So it made sense to kind of part ways at that stage. So, but in the meantime, since about the 2016, I'd been working on my own projects. I couldn't launch them, unfortunately, due to non-competition clauses. But at the moment, so basically, I came back. I set all my stuff up, registered with the government, and did all of the trademarking and all this other kind of malarkey, and then launched my games as soon as I could.
Wow. That is... So that's... Maybe it's a UK thing, because in my head I was like, trademark stuff? I guess you guys probably have different copyright law, because in America it's interesting, because like our copyright law is very much like, if you make a thing and release a thing, it is inherently yours, and then you only fight it if someone counters the thing, apparently, to like trademarking a game, unless there's like some unique IP to the process.
Well, I mean, obviously, similar in that if somebody just starts making the Hunter's Journaling faded port, then I can kind of go after them for that, especially if they just that kind of stuff. But basically, I just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't put it out there and then suddenly somebody else would say, oh, actually, I'm starting a company called Grindwheel Games and I've got the trademark, please give me all of your intellectual property. Or there's a certain level of paranoia to it, but essentially I just want to avoid problems down the line, because if I didn't do that and send it out there and it got really big and somebody came after me because I hadn't dotted all of the I's and crossed all of the T's, I didn't want that to happen down the line,
That makes sense. Okay.
So it's actually really cheap and simple. You just go onto a website, you pass through the stuff that you want to get trademarked. It's a small fee, and then bingo, a week later you've got your certificate.
That is way easier than it is here.
Yeah, well, it's way easier than it was in Poland. I think I'm still waiting on the email from when I was trying to trademark stuff in Poland.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then we're here then. So it's, let me get this right. The Hunter's Journals, Pale Harbor?
Pale Harbor, and Vile Philosophy, which went live on Monday as well.
So that's interesting. So it's these kind of like... So the games inherently aren't these super long things, and if you're like subdividing them that quickly?
Yeah, well, effectively, to have a system where I'd be able to release a new game every year. Because when I started job hunting near the end of my stay at Jagex, that was one of the things that I was getting back from recruiters. They were saying, these companies are only interested in people who've got yearly releases, because that was the kind of mentality within the game industry.
Mm.
These days, having a long stint of service at a certain company would see me a lot better, because that everyone's going for live services, the long ongoing processes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas back then it was very much you go to a company, you bang out a game, you go to another company, you bang out their game for the year. So me and Carlos, the guy who I worked with on these for the majority of it, we both wanted to work on a project that would expand our individual CVs, make it easier to get work down the line, and also maybe something that we could do as a living ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So,
we started out with a very advanced Metroidvania idea, and we went, we don't have time for this. And we basically pared it back to he had the time within his daily schedule to be able to do chunks of 2D art, and I had time within my schedule to write a story and a game engine to fit it. So that's how we ended up with these text adventures.
Nice. I think that's a good place to start it then. So the Hunter's Journal, then, as the best way to put it, is like the series and everything subdivides from it.
That's right.
So run me through. Actually, I want to go first. Is a text adventure. So obviously, I know like we think of like there's some of the novels tend to be decently. I want to say it's niche, but it's like a decently big niche. I don't know if I've thought of like journals and the way you're doing them as like a genre, and then B, like a genre that's like of a decent size and note. It's very interesting. Like obviously you found a way, I think, to do it really cool, but I never thought of it like in that way as a genre to do.
Well, the thing is, I grew up with the old fighting fantasy books.
Mm-hmm.
Those game books. I mean, Christ, they were quite a big chunk of my childhood. So that was obviously. I mean, we kind of pared down. At one point, we were going to be doing actual visual novels, but then we realised that we didn't have time to do all of the backgrounds, all of the different characters, and all that kind of stuff. So we then pared it down even further to we can have text on a page, we can have UI elements that are moving around, we can have still art on, we can have specific page art to have as a gallery, but we can't, and so it kind of broke down to that. I mean, I had been when I was at Jagex, I'd put forward the idea of taking a bunch of our quests and putting them on tablet in this kind of form, or in a more visual novel form, but that got shot down. It was actually where I came up with a handful of the ideas that eventually went into some of the UI.
Mm-hmm.
But because again, we had phenomenal quests, people would want to play them. So, and there would be just little short things that you could do. You sat on the bus, you've got your phone out, you've got your tablet out, Kindle, but you've got something to do, and you can just read.
So you almost want to hit the like Kindle market, but like with gamers is the best way, almost, I think, of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, there were various people suggested I try and put it on Kindle or Amazon, but especially with this kind of game, you'd have to be scrolling up and down and jumping to page, which would be inconvenient, except if you had a UI for jumping specifically to those pages, at which point I might as well be have its own game on Android, or in this case PC, for the version with the voiceover.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very interesting. So now that we're on that, then, in the genre part, then, so the Hunter's Journal. So basically, so you're a hunter then, and then basically you kind of like go through like a relatively short quest. I want to say it's 40 page. It's a little over 40 pages, but like when you're actively doing it, it's a different length than obviously if I just say it's 40 pages. So like, kind of. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean the main critical path, if you're going to hit the good ending, 50 odd pages.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the second one runs at about 160 odd. The third one's around about 160 odd. The fourth one, which I've just got the critical path done for that, is again it's pushing 170. So yeah, it's depending how quick you read and if you get the right answers, you know. It's quite short, but then again, these are fighting fantasy books, and you know what you're doing. You breeze through them in half an hour. If you don't, you can take several days of backtrack. If you're doing it legit, if you're not just sticking bookmarks in every page and jumping back to a bad decision and reversing it like that, then it could take you quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're short little digestible, they're self-contained stories.
So I kind of want to joke into like the idea of like doing actions in kind of like the story format. So obviously we all think of when I say you're doing action in story format, we all instantly go to what was Telltale Games. I feel like, but you're doing this in almost like a more 2D form than they were ever doing it in. So kind of like, how do you get the player to like go back to the idea of like feeling like they actually matter in this compared to being just told a story?
I expanded this a bit more in the second game onwards, but yeah, you are generally going to be affecting your statistics. So if you make a choice that's going to result in, say, for instance, accidentally killing a guy or letting a prisoner die or something like that, then your skill is going to go down. If you make the wrong decision, you're going to take a knife to the back, and depending on how severe the stab is, that might be the end of your game.
Mm-hmm.
In the second one onwards, there are a lot more. I'm not going to say Telltale-esque moral choices, but there are situations which will significantly affect the game further down the line, and you might not realize that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a bit more 2D. There's not like it's not like say for instance, it's not the length. I've not taken, say for instance, a whole Dragon Age game and condensed it down into the text form. This I had to kind of limit myself as well, because if I made it so that there was a whole bunch of options, there could be options on every page, I wouldn't stop writing. As in like an unlimited number of options on every page, and I wouldn't stop writing. I had to make sure that I was able to get each of these done within a year.
Right, that makes sense. That's just very interesting. I think of like finding that inherent balance. Well, on your end of like time and work, and then with the player's end of like, we all know if all of a sudden you give a player a thing that they feel like they don't have agency in, you actively lose it quickly. But at the same time, you don't want to also like front load all of your choices, so when they hit the middle of the game, they go, wait, that was all of the choices I could actually make. So it's like, how do you find the line of like fooling the player versus like being honest without like losing them very quickly in the game? I think it's a very interesting choice always.
Yeah, it's difficult because since so the people who got their hands on the first version of the game, the first time they did so, there was only the critical path. And as I was adding side paths, they were kind of ignoring them. Mm-hmm. Now, when they got their hands on the second game, that one was fully written, all the paths in, and so there wasn't an immediate choice of solutions. They didn't just know the answer. They were thrown into the maze, and I saw some very interesting results from that. I sat down with a friend of mine from university who I hadn't seen for a while. We met up a couple of months back, and I had my tablet with me, and I let them run through book 1 and 2. And I sat there watching over their shoulder. Obviously, I was hanging back. I wasn't giving them any clues, and just seeing how interesting it was that they were coming up to choices that I thought were obvious, and they were going nope, and taking one of the other side paths. Now, normally there's at the very least, there's a lot of the vast majority of the pages give you at least 2 choices of how you're getting out there. There's not a lot of big strings of just hit next, unless you have a wrong path, and you should be seeing an option for actually you did something earlier, so you can talk to this guy or you can use this object, but you didn't get them.
Okay.
So that would generally be where you're going to see a long string of just hitting next. You're going to be seeing these options otherwise. But yeah, it's so weird to see people playing it and just going, it's obviously not the way you're supposed to go. But at the same time, trying not to say that.
Oh, I've done enough playtesting where yeah, it's literally like I've learned. Literally, there are times when I'm leading a playtest. I just go, "Here's the game," and they go, "Where are you going?" I go, just look at the camera. I just have to walk away because I don't like it's this inherent nature of like, but do the thing or what do you think or try this thing. Like you just want to pipe in.
Yeah, I mean there was there's two kind of that I remember from back at Jagex. One of them was when we were doing a playtest for some executives on Stellar Dawn. We had them running through one of the end game raids, and one of the guy was like kept on complaining that he couldn't. He didn't know what was going on, and we were giving him instructions, and the other teammates were yelling at him to do some stuff, and he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Turns out he refused to move the camera. He couldn't see anything that was going on. He was just his camera was left in the exact same position as when he spawned, and he was just kind of clicking roughly on the mini map, and obviously couldn't target enemies or any of this other kind of stuff. So he had no idea what was going on during the boss fights.
That's so interesting. And this is like no offense, because I'm gonna stick the honest truth. We need executives and business people in the games industry, but they are the best bug tester, but the worst play testers in the world at the same time.
Well, I mean, it kind of depends because as the other people seemed to know what was going on, that they were kind of pushing through.
Maybe it depends, but very much I feel like if we get like because there's like two types I think of business people in the game industry. It's business people who came from business and business people who work their way up through games. And I think it's the business people who came like external business people are the ones I always go, you could play the game, but it's like the feedback's always like this inherent grain of salt I have to take of like they're not my audience.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because there's definitely a kind of a divide in the mentality there.
Because they're looking for like a certain thing is the reason they're playing at the time, but it's this thing I go. It's like it's not the like we know better either. It's not trying to come out that way, but it's the like in the moment I go. The problem I know you're having is I know the audience is not going to have because I can make inherent assumptions of like they can control a camera or like if you hand like some people like controllers even and they have double joysticks. It's like most people won't have that same issue that like someone who's not played games would have kind of thing.
That reminds me of that quite. I don't know. I think it was a bit divisive at the time. That story of the games journalist who was playing Cuphead, who was kind of ignoring the message on screen of how to do the dash, and was complaining about that. You know, if there would be a lot of people. I mean, obviously there are some gamers who would look at that screen going, "What the hell am I supposed to do? I've got no idea," and quit the game, rage quit. But you know, there is that mentality of a lot of gamers through it. A lot of the people who'd played the game, either Stellar Dawn or RuneScape, would know about the camera controls. A lot of people who played any MMOs, especially browser-based ones, would know that there was some sort of camera control. So when people are yelling, shoot the monster, and big explosions are coming in from off-screen, they would at least try and find some way to turn the camera to find out why they're dying, at any rate.
Mm-hmm. It's just always this interesting like line of like how do we define this stuff and like who's playing and who do we want and not who do we want to play, it's who do we expect to play and that kind of stuff. But kind of back to this kind of as we get towards the tail end of this, I was curious. So you released the first game, Pearl Harbor, I'm gonna say roughly a little under a month ago, and then you released Hunter's Journal about a little week away from recording this. So I was curious, kind of like the feedback you received on these games, kind of like versus what you expected, and kind of like did it meet your expectations?
So the main, so I received a chunk of feedback about the UI, which and some decisions that were made with that. Now, the main one is that effectively combat is not hugely interesting. I had made changes from the first to the second book and further onwards to make it more interesting, and there were some things that really can't be fixed without a UI rework, and I've sent this up the line. There were a handful of decisions that when I was called on them, I was like, that doesn't make sense. The biggest one was that previously error messages come on. The UI is laid out that the screen itself is the book, so you've got the pages are open, you've got text and pictures, you've got little bookmarks and ribbons that you tug to go to the appropriate pages, and on top of that, your UI for your character sheet and little notes and additional stuff is pieces of torn off paper. And when you got an error message, a little appear on a piece of paper and just kind of scroll into the screen, and you could click on it to get rid of it. And usually when people were playing it, when I'd seen them, they would tap that and it would go away. And this actually kind of ties into the thing which you were saying before. And the person who gave me the feedback was like, I realized I could get rid of it, but it was still quite intrusive. And I started them coming in at the bottom of the screen and working their way up to the top. So if you called in multiple ones, then they would kind of progressively get higher up the page. You would scroll in, you'd get rid of them. If you didn't, then they would scroll back off the page. And, they said, it scrolls in very, very slowly, it's quite intrusive, and they hang around too long. So I looked at it again and thought, you know what, yeah, they're exactly right about this, and reversed the whole thing. So now, when you get an error message, same UI element until we get an upgrade to it, but it pops in at the top of the screen, no scrolling, stays around for a couple of seconds, bang, disappears. No fuss, and you can still click to get rid of it if you want. So it's this kind of the kind of stuff that I could take care of from my side. I got out the way as quickly as possible. The stuff that requires UI sent over to Carlos, but we'll see what time he's got to be able to fix that, and when he does, it'll be implemented into the games.
Nice. Well, that's very interesting, and I'm excited to see kind of like how this kind of series of games kind of evolves over time as you keep working on them. I want to thank you for joining me for this, I think, fun discussion on the games industry, your games, and all of that fun stuff. So the way I like to close this is, so your game series is the Hunter's Journals. One is Vile Philosophy. You think I'd be good at English because I speak it, and the other is Pale Harbor. So obviously you can find these games on Steam. Any other place you want to pimp out your games, place to find you or your studio?
Yes, you'll be able to get Pale Harbor is now back on the Google Play Store. A period because of some interaction between Unity and their storefront. Vile Philosophy is going to be going up there soon as well. And as soon as I've got the time for it, I'm going to be trying to do an Apple build. But at the moment, it's Steam and it's Google Play. And thank you for having me on. It's been fun. Thank you very much.
Yep. And again, remember, folks, you could find the SWW show. It seems like every couple weeks with some random stuff. Otherwise, we have our normal podcast and movie club every single month. Remember, me and my friend Dan are doing our Borderlands podcast leading up to Borderlands 3. Check those out, all on the SWW feed. Remember, you can find the Hunter's Journals on Steam and all Google Play Store, and hopefully one day the iTunes Store, just maybe. Again, thank you all for joining us, and have a good night, everybody.
Nice.
This podcast was a product of the SWW Show. You can find more at the swwshow.com or facebook.com/the SWW Store or twitter.com/SWW. You can find out more about Mike at Mikey_Maroney on Twitter and more about AJ at Losivor on Twitter. Remember, new episodes come out twice a month, one focusing on the new entertainment news and one focusing on movie club, so new and an old movie. You can find out more again at the swwshow.com, and you can find the show on podcast services around the globe.